Hello friends, welcome back to another video. In this video, we will cover GitHub Foundations. We will understand what are the core concepts of GitHub, and this video will also help if you are preparing for a GitHub administrator. So let's begin. We will cover the following sections: basic of Git and GitHub, core GitHub functionalities, collaborations and workflow, security and permissions, advanced GitHub features, troubleshooting and problem solving, and the last section would be scenario-based questions. So let's start with the basics of Git and GitHub. What is Git and how does it different from GitHub? Git is a version control system used to track changes in a code. GitHub is a cloud-based platform built on Git that provides hosting for repositories, collaborations tools, and additional features like pull request, CI/CD, and issue tracking. So Git is basically a version control system used to track changes in a code, and GitHub is built on top of it, which will help us in uh, hosting our repositories, collaborating tools, and other features for CI/CD pipeline and other developments. Moving to the next, explain the difference between a repository, branch, and commit. Repository, a storage space for your code, including its entire history and configuration. Branch, a version of the repository where you can work on specific features or fixes without affecting the main code base. Commit, a snapshot of changes in the repository serving as a save point. Moving to the next one. How do you initialize a Git repository? Use the command git int in the terminal inside your project folder to create a new Git repository. The command turns any directory into a Git repository. So this is a command which we can use to create a repository into GitHub, and we will store our codes and binaries and other stuff in the repository. Next, what is the purpose of git ignore file? A .git ignore file is used to specify files and directories that Git should ignore. This is particularly useful for excluding files that are not relevant to the project or shouldn't be shared with others, such as log files, temporary files, and personal files. Now, how we can create a git ignore file. To create a .git ignore file, navigate to the root of your local Git repository and create the file using the following command: touch space .git ignore. You can then open the file in a text editor and add patterns to specify which files and directories to ignore. For example, you can have ignore space all space .log files. So it will ignore all the files which is having .log. Ignore all the files in the directory named temp to temp space slash. So this way you can specify which file to ignore into the git ignore. Moving to the next, how do you clone a repository? Use the git clone command followed by repository URL. Here are examples for both HTTPS and SSH URLs. So at times we may need to do a cloning of a repository so that we make some changes on the secondary on the replica repository. Now how we can do it? We can do it by using for HTTPS we can use git clone http colon slash and the URL, and if you want to do it for SSH, then git clone space git at the rate github.com username repository.git. So these are the two ways we can do a clone of our repository. In the next section, we will go through core GitHub functionalities. What are GitHub actions and why they are used? GitHub actions automate workflow like testing, deployment, and integration. For example, you can automatically run test when a pull request is open. This is the purpose of a GitHub actions. Next, explain the difference between fork and clone. Fork Create a copy of someone else's repository under your account, allowing independent modifications. Clone creates a local copy of a repository on your own machine. So this is the difference between clone and fork. What is a pull request and how do you create one? A pull request PR proposes changes from one branch to another, typically from a feature branch to the main branch. To create a PR, push your branch to GitHub, go to the repository, select your branch and click New Pull Request. This is the way we can do a code push from a testing branch to the main branch. Next, how can you review and comment on a pull request? Navigate to the PR, click Files Changed, and add comments on the specific line or give overall feedback. Next, what is the difference between merging and rebashing? Merging combines branches, preserving the history of both. Rebashing moves commits from one branch into another, creating a linear history. So this is the difference between merging and rebashing. Next, in this section, we'll go through collaborations and the workflow. How do you handle conflict in GitHub during a merge? Below are the steps. Identify conflicting files in the PR pull request. Open the files and resolve conflict manually. Stage and commit the resolved files. Push changes to the branch. These are the ways or the steps we can handle conflict in a GitHub. Next one, what is the purpose of a branch in a collaborative workflow? Branches isolate changes, enabling multiple contributors to work simultaneously without affecting the main code base. Next one, how can you protect branches in GitHub? In the repository settings, enable branch protection rule. For example, require PR pull request review before merging or preventing force push. Next, what are the best practices for writing commit messages? Use a short descriptive summary, 50 characters max. The limitation is you cannot go beyond 50. Provide additional details in the body if needed. Use imperative mode. Example, add features instead of added features. Next one. Explain the difference between git fetch and git pull. Git fetch. Download updates from the remote repository without merging them. Git pull fetches updates and merges them into your current branches. So this is a difference between when we do a fetch and when we do a pull. Now, in this section, we'll go through some security and permissions scenarios and what are GitHub repository visibility settings. Public. Anyone can view the repository. Private. Only invited collaborators can access it. Internal. Accessible only to members of the organization for GitHub Enterprise. Next. How can you add collaborators to a repository? In the repository settings, go to collaborators and invite users by their GitHub username or email. What are GitHub issues and how can they be used for project management? In the repository settings, go to collaborators and invite users by their GitHub username or explain the difference between GitHub personal access token and SSH keys. Personal access token PAT secure alternatives to password for API access. SSH keys securely authenticate with GitHub without using a username password. Next one, how do you set up two-factor authentication on GitHub? Go to your GitHub access, go to your GitHub account settings, enable 2FA under security, choose a method, authenticator app or SMS, follow the setup instructions. Now, in this section, we'll go through advanced GitHub features. What are GitHub pages and how can they be used? GitHub pages host static website directly from a repository. Enable it in the repository settings and Add HTML/CSS files to the appropriate branch, usually main or GH pages. Explain the concept of a GitHub project board. A project board is a Kanban style tool for organizing tasks using cards. It helps visualize work access, teams, or repositories. How do you use tag and releases in GitHub? Tags. Mark specific points in the repository history like version number. Releases. Combine tags with release notes, binaries, and changelogs. What are webhook in GitHub? Webhook send real-time updates to external services when specific events, example push, PR, occur in a repository. So this is kind of a notification. How can you use GitHub CLI to manage repositories? Install GitHub CLI and use commands like gh-repo clone, gh-issue create, or gh-pr merge to manage repositories from the terminal. Now we'll go through troubleshooting and problem solving section. What would you do if a repository become out of sync with the remote? In that case, we can use git fetch and git reset hard origin / the branch name. How do you recover a deleted branch in GitHub? If the branch was pushed to the GitHub, restore it using git checkpoint -b branch name and origin / the branch name. What steps would you take to resolve a failed push due to non-fast forward updates? Fetch changes first, merge or rebash locally and then push. Git fetch, git merge, and then git push. How can you troubleshoot a failed GitHub Actions workflow? Open the Actions tab in the repository. Check the logs for the failed jobs. Identify and fix errors in the workflow YAML file. What are the common reasons for merge conflict and how can you avoid them? Reasons for the conflict: concurrent edit to the same lines or outdated branches. Avoidance: regularly pull changes and use feature branches. Scenario based questions: describe how you would onboard a new team member to a GitHub repository. Share the repository URL and documentation. Add them as a collaborator or grant appropriate permissions. Guide them through cloning the repository and setting up their local environment. How would you set up a CI/CD pipeline using GitHub Actions? Create a .github/workflow directory in the repository. Add a YAML file defining the workflow. Specify triggers, example on push, and job, example build, test, and deploy. Explain how you would handle a situation where sensitive information is accidentally omitted. Remove the sensitive data from the history using git filter -repo or bfg repo cleaner. Force push the changes. Rotate compromised credentials immediately. How would you organize a project with multiple contributors to ensure code quality and consistency? Use branch protection rule. Implement code review. Use linters and formatters used with CI workflow. Maintain clear documentation and a contribution guide. Thank you for watching this video. Hope this would have been useful. Thank you.